alaikum everyone, and Ramadan Mubarak. So I'm a registered nutritionist. I work in research and nutrition research at Queen Mary University of London. I'm also a campaign lead for Action on Sugar, which is a charity looking at changing policies around how much sugar companies put in their products, but also about what government can do. So I'm going, next slide please. So I'm going to be talking to you about sugar, and specifically the sugar tax. Not often someone talks about tax as being something good, but I'm going to argue that this is a really good idea. So no doubt we know that the vast majority of us are eating too much sugar. But how much is too much? So currently in the UK, we should be striving to bring down our sugar intake to only 7 teaspoons or 7 cubes. And to put in context, a typical can of soft drink that is very popular contains about 9 teaspoons of sugar. So just by drinking that, you exceed the level the maximum level you should be having in a day. And for children, it's far lower than that, particularly for children under the age of 10. So in reality, we exceed these levels on average in kids about 3 times, and in adults about twice that amount. And I imagine that in our communities we exceed that even more, and that's because many traditional foods have poor labeling, and we're not that aware of the amount of sugar that there is in these products. So there are many reasons, including labeling, why we eat too much sugar, but I'll touch on a few later on. Next slide, please. So one of the major consequences of eating too much sugar is that you probably know that high sugar products and drinks tend to be highly palatable products. And what often happens is we tend to overconsume them. And so it's not, I'm sure many have had a situation where you've opened a packet of sharing bags and you consumed the whole bag yourself. Now, that happens, and I'm not suggesting that we're all binging on products like this, but it's that additional calories of 100 or 200 calories per day over a long period of time is resulting what we have now in the UK, one of the poorest statistics in terms of childhood obesity, but even in adulthood. So 1 in 4 reception-age children and 1 in 3 year 6 children are overweight or obese. And 2/3 of the adult population are overweight or obese. And this is partly because of our huge excess intake of sugar. And this is a completely avoidable burden on the NHS. It costs about 6.1 billion, and overall we pay this through our taxes, and to the economy about 27 billion. So no doubt the government should look at ways to tackle this preventable condition. Next slide. So some of you might say, well, I have a normal weight, and I'm a normal weight, and my kids are normal weight, so it's not very relevant to us. The other consequence of having too much sugar is tooth decay. So the major impact, there is nothing, I think, in nutrition that has a clear correlation between a damage to the strongest tissue in the human body and a nutrient that you eat in your diet, between sugar and your damage you cause to your teeth. So tooth decay in adulthood is very painful if you've experienced it. Now imagine how young children can feel. And it often results in being absent from school, lower education attainment, and on top of all of that, it's the main reason why children end up being admitted to hospital and undergo general anesthetics. That's because they need it, extensive tooth extraction. So about 1/4 of 5-year-olds have tooth decay, and it's affecting 3 to 4 of their teeth on average. Again, this is a completely preventable condition and an unnecessary burden on the healthcare service, and it's costly for adults too. So now it's really easy to just blame parents. Well, you're buying the product and it's all because of you, but I want to argue that it's way more complex than this. Kids live in the environment that we currently live in, and they are influenced more by this environment than us. Kids are surrounded by unhealthy food all the time, from billboards near schools, to targeted ads on their phones, to grandparents that want to quiet them really quickly by giving them sweets, to actual products that contain high levels of sugar, being packaged in very colorful packaging. It's very easy to take a child into a breakfast cereal aisle, and before you know it, they're not going towards an all-bran product. They are going towards the colorful packaging that's intentionally designed to appeal and entice children. So all these factors together make it typically very difficult for parents to have and control what their kids are having. And on top of this, there's often misleading marketing claims on products that basically try to assure parents that these products are fine for your kids. And on top of all this, they tend to be they're cheaper products, highly affordable to the masses, and often poorer children are suffering from being overweight or obese, or having tooth decay, and so there is a social deprivation factor involved too. Next slide. So, it has become evident to the government that tackling childhood obesity goes beyond just blaming parents, but looking at the whole system. And while the government failed in many of their promises, one area they deserve some credit is tackling childhood obesity. So in 2016, they produced a cross-government plan to tackle this. And in this plan, they looked at one of the key areas is excess sugar intake. They've introduced different policy areas, one of which I'm going to be talking about. So to start off, before we look at what to do, the government thought, well, we need to look at what is the main source of sugar in children's diets. And the main source, so 30% of all the sugar in children's diets was coming from soft drinks, and 40% in teenagers' diets was coming through soft drinks. So it became that soft drinks is a very clear target. Next slide. So in 2016, in the budget announcement, the government stated that they're going to introduce a tax on soft drinks companies, note, on soft drinks companies, not on the consumer. If the companies were producing soft drinks with 8% sugar, that's your typical soft drinks, or more, and they were given 2 years to change their formulations. If they refused to, they would be charged 24p per litre. There are only a handful of companies that produce soft drinks in the UK. That's a huge cost, additional cost for those companies. For companies that were producing products between 5% and less than 8% sugar, they would be charged at 18p per litre. And so quickly it became evident that there were two different sectors within the soft drinks industry. The retailers decided that in a very competitive market, and the retailers exist in all the supermarkets exist in a very competitive market, they decided that we are going to change our formulations to go below the 5% and therefore escape paying any of the levy to the treasury. Then you have the big manufacturers that decided, well, we don't want to change our formulation. We've decided that we'll pass the cost on to the consumer by either reducing the bottle sizes while charging the same amount, or simply increasing the price by about 20%. In both cases, I think it's fine, because the result is more expensive products or products with less sugar. So then, next slide. So what happened is actually a huge impact. So 2016 was the announcement year. We've looked at data, and others have published data looking at 2015, how the soft drinks market looked like, and then compared it to 2017, a year after the announcement, but a year before enforcement of the tax. And already we've seen a huge shift in the market. So within a year, we've had an 11% reduction in sugar levels. These are the sugar levels that the average person is taking in, but also in the amount of sugar in those soft drinks. And then an average of 6% reduction in calories. You could see the dotted line shows a small shift, but this is based on data from 2017. And I imagine now, when we have a new publication looking at current levels, and it will definitely would have come down even further than this. There is very little in terms of nutrition policy that something's had such a big impact in such a short period of time, such as this, and I think it's been a brilliant idea. Now we've got many other countries around the world copying our example, from Ireland to Spain, but also countries in the Gulf, such as Saudi Arabia, introducing 100% tax on energy drinks, doubling the price or even more than that. They've just gone with a very arbitrary measure. If it's called energy drinks, then you've put it on it. Now they're looking at introducing something in a similar format to encourage the market to shift. So before I conclude, I expect all of you are wondering, well, all these other drinks will probably have sweeteners, and are they any better? So I think the jury's out on sweeteners. I don't think we can paint them all with the same brush. The evidence is very different, and they've been in the human diet at different periods, some with up to 30 years and others within the last 2 years. I think if you're a person that has to have a soft drinks during your meal or after your meal, cutting back overall, whether it's diet version or it's a sweet version, is good, but try to think of it as a short-term solution, and that overall you should be cutting back on them, because I'm not a big advocate of either of them. And thank you.